I am suffering from a brand new illness, long ignored by the modern day scientist, and I have a name for it. It started when I became negative towards any new update that was announced, and later slowly developed into an aversion to even trying new games. These are all primary symptoms of an illness I like to call feels bad gaming. If you've ever played the same monotonous game non-stop over and over again, or have a combined playtime of 30 minutes for the last 5 games you purchased on Steam, or just haven't felt that excitement about a new game in a while, you just might have it too. My illness could have been caused by the ungodly amount of time and influence the YouTube algorithm has over my life, or the year-long hiatus from stepping outside of my mom's basement. But I have felt that over the past few years, video games have become the Dollar General of entertainment. The only thing worse right now might be the Netflix special selections. I mean, come on dude, what the fuck is some of this stuff? Pay-to-win games are like cigarettes for the gaming genre, slowly killing all the games I've played over the years. But there are other culprits like a billion mods adding tiny things to the game but also costing hundreds of dollars. Hyping up games before they release just for them to suck. Studios focusing on catering to the casual gamer. Did you know 85% of the gaming industry's revenue come from free-to-play games, or otherwise known as pay-to-win? I mean, I remember when I used to be able to go to the store, beg my mom for 30 minutes to buy me a copy of Age of Empires and not have to worry about some update that will ultimately destroy the game that I love. It's like every day we get more bad news from the big boys of game development. See how easy it is for me to ramble all day about what's bad about gaming? I mean, this video was initially started as a studios are evil kind of video, but then I really dug into it. Were games really that good in the past? I mean, yeah, some of them were great, but also, I was really young then. Anything could have impressed me. I remember loving playing The Mummy on PlayStation 1 and it being the greatest game of all time. But I also remember basically being too scared and probably too stupid to get past the first cutscene. How impressionable I was as a kid matters, as that little bit of insight made me reflect on gaming as a whole and realize that actually this is the greatest point ever in gaming history. Number 1. Don't buy games immediately and manage your own expectations. People, for the love of God, stop paying to pre-order a game. All games today are available online and they will not run out of copies, unless you have some strange fetish for CDs. People need to remember that pre-ordering games is basically the equivalent to lending a company money and then at the same time tricking you to pay interest to them for the loan. There's a time value for your money, and it's something you're oftentimes exchanging for a reskin of an item. I mean, the reward for pre-ordering Duke Nukem Forever, one of the arguably worst games in the world, was access to Big Head mode. If you're looking for a discount, just wait. That same discount will present itself again, and most likely even more so, just a few months later. And that discount was paid for by the guys that pre-ordered the game. So just sit back, chill out, and don't be manipulated by the studio. We need to just accept that the gaming industry has changed totally. Gone are the days where you could just pop a CD in and expect the games to run exactly how it should. But maybe that's not so bad, because I'll probably also be getting updates to the same game 5 years later. Games today are huge, really huge, and generally the larger the game, the more bugs there will be. How many times do we have to go over this? Remember when No Man's Sky released? A totally buggy mess. Battlefield 4, Diablo 3, and just recently Cyberpunk 2077. At least we forget the one that must not be named. Which brings me to my second and much more positive point. Games are updated and turned into absolute gems. Even the bad games with horrible launches. Yes, I know what you're thinking. Oh, we shouldn't forgive the studios for not delivering the second it releases. You have to look at this from an angle of complete selfishness and wait for the game to release and go through a few patches. No one is forcing you to play the game immediately. Battlefield 4 was horrible on release. I still have PTSD from my college roommate who got scary angry when he disconnected randomly from a game. which has turned into one of my favorite shooters of all time and has been the predecessor to some of my favorite Battlefield games. Most obviously, No Man's Sky, which had a really rocky start, but came back to recently win an award for Best Ongoing Game. In a world where games are patched constantly, we have great games that turn into absolutely amazing games, which give us some of the most unforgettable experiences. Battlefield 5, a game released back in 2013, is still one of the greatest games of all time through constant updates and additions to the game. Even the one that must not be named has been getting positive reviews a few years after its release. Games are so big and ambitious, and the audiences are so invested that studios are forced to constantly update and improve games for their clients, which I personally believe leads to studios making some of the greatest games of all time. Number 3. Studios are starting to listen when you complain. I didn't think this way until recently, and studios are not perfect, and let me tell you, after the fatal date, December 7th, 2010, and the release of World of Warcraft Cataclysm, arguably the worst expansion in the game's history, and then failed expansion after failed expansion for the past 10 years, and borderline neglect from Blizzard, I think I can speak as an authority here. Something changed though recently, not through the goodwill of Blizzard I'm sure, but with the sudden realization that if they want this IP to remain profitable and competitive in today's world, where there are so many entertainment options, they will actually have to listen to their customers, which now seems to be the case after their release of No Changes Classic World of Warcraft and the successful release of Retail Shadowlands. Who knew? What a surprise. The same people who've been playing the same game for the past 15 years know what they want. And it isn't only Blizzard who seem to now be listening to their customers. Star Wars Battlefront is a perfect example, an absolute great game, which was made so only after the bombardment of complaints from customers to remove loot boxes. Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition, which was literally risen from the ashes by a fan of the game and after customer outcry, and has turned into an amazing rock paper scissors RTS. It's also why Manor, a game currently developed by a tiny team, has received so much interest in the RTS community, while a much bigger Total War team is struggling to get positive reviews for any of their more traditional products outside of the Warhammer franchise, mainly because they're going against what their core base of customers want, where their developers think they know better than their clients and release horrible games like Total War Troy. I mean, come on, no one wants that game. With that though, you yourself, a customer of the game, can influence the outcome of that same game you're consuming. At no other point in history was that possible. Today we have Discord, Twitch, YouTube, Reddit, and countless forums to connect with your favorite game developers. Which brings me to my fourth and final point. There is more variety than ever in gaming today. For example, the 4 biggest and most popular games of 2020 were Animal Crossing, Call of Duty, FIFA, and Grand Theft Auto, meaning the mainstream consumers can, if nothing else, explore an island with some strange tiny animals, compete in an intense FPS, memorize your credit card details, and roleplay online. Gaming has become so large and caters to such a large diverse range of consumers that there's a little bit of everything for everyone now. Like in any market, we go through cycles of extreme disruption, growth, and stagnation, where the points between disruption and growth are when the market is pure bliss for consumers. Where nothing is extreme, we get to enjoy blockbuster games like League of Legends, Minecraft, and Fortnite after they shook things up and in their mature form. We can play copycat titles that come and go and sometimes become more popular than the original, while most importantly, studios start to realize who their customer base is and recognize that there are so many other competing games in the same genres now that in order to survive, they need to really cater to those customers. The best example is pay-to-win games, however much I dislike them. Used to be considered the low-hanging fruit of game development, and the most popular games in the genre were things like Candy Crush, which is, in my eyes, is just a pay-to-win version of Solitaire. That's just not the case anymore, as there is more competition and we see much more complex and interesting games like Raid Shadow Legends. Which also means those same studios are not targeting outside of their client base, which means it's not getting shoved down my throat anymore, or at least not as much as it used to be. Pay-to-win companies understand that at this point of inflection they need to focus on their base. That's also why games with cash shops, pay-to-win or not, like Genshin Impact, Raid Shadow Legends, and League of Legends are pumping out a ridiculous amount of content. Because the average consumer's expectations for every dollar they spend is increasing as there becomes more variety and more option for that gamer. All of the competition is putting the power back in the consumer's hands, which makes me feel good for the current state of gaming. I can choose to build a huge space factory, which admittedly will resemble a plate of spaghetti at the end of the game in Satisfactory, one of my all-time favorite games, for a one-time fee. Or I can pay to download the African edition of Anno 1800 to freshen up the gameplay. It's whatever. I get to choose from a diverse lineup of 10,000 games on the Steam store, which is the largest amount of games ever available in history. While in 2013 there were just 500 games available on the platform, and even earlier than that, in 2007, there were only 112 games. Whoa, man, this has been a lot of talking for me, and now that we are over 2,000 words into the script, it's time to come to a conclusion and wind things down. Let's all confess that most of us in the gaming community have a strong negativity bias, where we focus largely on negative triggers instead of the positive ones. That's why there are so many videos on the supposed downward spiral of gaming. We now have more game options than I could have ever imagined, giving us, the consumer, the ability to pick and choose which games and studios we want to support. There are no studios forcing us to play their games, only our own attachment to the specific IPs. There are also more people playing games than ever, and more diversity in gaming than before. It's easy to get in touch with people with similar interests and connect with developers using social media. The gaming industry as a whole is a free and dynamic ecosystem that promotes diversity of content and freedom to create whatever you want. In which other period of gaming could we get games like Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which is one of the most visually stunning games ever made, or a game like Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord, which lets you lead an army while also being a part of it? Either way, I hope this video helps some people get rid of their feels bad gaming mindset and bring some positivity. Do let me know, guys, in the comments if you agree or disagree with me. Otherwise, this episode was a lot more work than I normally put into my videos, so I hope you guys liked it, and do subscribe if you want to see some more of my content.